Good evening. I'm Kevin Cooper with Boone Newspapers. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It's very nice to see people in person for a change, and I think, as far as I can tell, no one forgot that we were not on a Zoom call and kept their PJs on, so that's a good thing. If you will, please join me in thanking our sponsor for tonight, AT&T. I don't think there's an AT&T representative here, but if you will, give them a round of applause for that. Next, I'd like to call Sid Salter up to the podium. Sid is the Director of Public Affairs at Mississippi State University and MPA past president and Hall of Fame member, and he will make tonight's Hall of Fame induction. Sid?
Thank you, Kevin. It's quite an honor for me to come here tonight to participate in the induction of our next Mississippi Press Association Hall of Fame inductee, and someone who I've been fortunate to call a friend for the length of my career and into my childhood. My father and Jack's father were actually friends and associates well back into the time that Jack and I were young, and so I'm thrilled to be here. Jack's pedigree, and it's a long one and an impressive one. Go ahead and open it. Will be in the Fourth Estate in excruciating detail. I know because I wrote the nomination letter and I included every factoid that I could mine out of my own files, and with the help of Jack's son Ray and other co-conspirators. But I have prepared a little multimedia presentation that I think will help launch this. So let's begin. I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist. As we're inducting a rebel and soon to be president of the Golden Eagle fan club, I couldn't resist that. But let's move to the next slide. We're here to salute my friend Jack Ray Tannehill, our next MPA Hall of Famer. Next slide. It's a family affair with the Tannehills. Jack is coming in 2021. His father, Jack Long Tannehill, was inducted in 1999. There's the plaque from the MPA office there that denotes that. Next slide. Jack literally, well, I don't want to disappoint the grandchildren. He was not born in a log cabin. He didn't chop wood, all of that. But he did grow up in a newspaper office around a press. I'd be stunned if that's not his bicycle, and I'd be stunned if he didn't use that bicycle to run errands and deliver papers and do whatever else his mom and dad told him to do. I was fortunate to know Mr. Tannehill and Ms. Courtney, who went on to become the longtime director of the Neshoba County Library there in Philadelphia. But a second generation newspaper family, the Tannehills newspapered in Louisiana and in Mississippi. Next slide, please. There's no nice way to say this. Jack really dominated the BNC awards in his division, not just for a few years, but for decades. Put out a high quality publication in a small town. We know about that in this association, and we watch people like Jack Tannehill and Scott Boyd and others who, Ray, good gracious, we've got people that are sort of 1 and 2 horse operations in small towns, and they find a way to serve their communities and to make a living doing it. And my hat's off to all of them, but certainly to Jack. He always insisted on producing a high quality newspaper. Next slide. I'm not sure where Jack got this suit, but I'm pretty sure he didn't pay a whole lot for it. But have leisure suit, will travel. That's a shot of Jack with Governor Bill Waller. And here's Jack during his service to MPA with fellow second generation and past MPA President Marie Harris. As I said earlier, what we do here, our associations here, it's a family affair. Move along. This is Jack honoring former MPA Executive Director Carolyn Wilson for her service. Carolyn's here tonight, along with her husband Harry. And Jack played a pivotal role in bringing Carolyn on board the MPA staff, and together and with colleagues in MPA, they did a lot of great things. We got an office building. We got MPA out of the Godwin building, and we achieved a measure of independence that was important as we would grow for the future. And Jack always had an eye in his own paper and in the business of the Press Association for talent. Carolyn is an excellent example of that, and we're so glad that you're with us tonight for this event, Carolyn. Next slide. The friends we make as young editors and publishers are often with people that we choose to learn from and emulate. This was certainly the case with George Keith of the Carthaginian, who was a mentor and friend to Jack. He was a great colleague of Jack's father, and Jack Ray had the honor of doing for George Keith what I'm doing for Jack Ray tonight, and I know it was a great pleasure to him. I remember that evening. Let's go to the next slide. Again, the recurring theme of family and generations. This is George Keith's son, John. I'm not sure John and Jack had great in-depth discussions about newspapering, but they talked often about the short game and about whether we had enough beers to make the round of golf at the Press Association tournament. They had a lot of fun together. Past MPA presidents, Ken Krillhart of Columbia and Marcus Bowers of Brandon, friends, colleagues, people that Jack really enjoyed being with here in the Press Association. Next slide. Here's what people may not know about Jack. Of course, he had some well-publicized run-ins with local government in Newton County and Union, and he pushed back and stood his ground, and did so under pretty significant threats of violence, but he stood his ground. But what you may not know is Jack was instrumental in the forerunner formulation of Mississippi Press Services. Jack ran a not inconsequential sort of ad agency out of the Union Appeal. He had a client that so many Mississippi newspapers depended on, TGNY, and he put their circulars together. He printed them. He came up with a distribution scheme, and he was doing it a long time before the grocery chains and others kind of figured that out on their own. And I guess he could have just kind of kept that something of benefit to the Union Appeal, but he went on and shared it with his colleagues at MPA, and that was an important piece of business in that it taught us how to do things of that nature. And then when I was able to join some of my colleagues on the board, and casino gaming became part of the mix in Mississippi, because of what we learned with TGNY and other small clients like that, we were not totally unprepared when we started having to handle, along longer string of zeros in doing casino business. So Jack deserves a great deal of credit for that. He's a really good printer. Outside of being a publisher and outside of being a good newsman, Jack is an excellent printer. And he always exhibited that in the products, not just web printing, but in the sheet fed printing he did, and it helped make a small town weekly newspaper economically viable. When Jack retired, the Mississippi legislature honored him for his service with a resolution saluting his service not just to Union and to Newton County, but to the entire state and to the newspaper industry. Now, after retirement, he got bored at home. He and Judy had a brief stint as undercover DEA agents, but their disguises weren't very well. But as the slide notes, behind every successful man is an absolutely astonished woman, and I think Judy fills that role nicely. Now, another skill that a lot of you didn't know Jack had, he's the practice holder for his grandson, Jack Tannehill, who's the future place kicker for the University of Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles. And let me tell you something, I'm going to enjoy seeing Jack get as deep into that as he did his grandson's baseball and some of the activities of his granddaughters and his daughter-in-law's municipal elected office successes. And Jack, you got a lot of leftover black and gold from the Union Yellow Jackets. Are you going to try to pawn that off as Southern gear, or what are we going to do? Jack is the pa-in-law of the High Mayor of Oxford, Mississippi, Robin Tannehill, who's with us tonight. Robin, we're honored to have you with us with your family. Ray and Robin gave Jack the greatest gift he's ever had, his 3 grandchildren, Molly, Catherine, Maggie, and Jack. And of course, we all know Jack's loyalty to the University of Mississippi, and how well Ray did there, both as an undergraduate and in law school. And of course, even though Jack's easing toward 80, he's still in character building exercises. He had one daughter granddaughter go to Mississippi State, and he's got a grandson headed to USM. So it just never ends, does it, Jack? These things that we learn.
It only gets better.
And it only gets better. 3 generations of the Tannehill family. This is a shot celebrating Jack's birthday at Wrigley Field, which, it is kind of awe. It's pretty great. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Jack Ray Tannehill as the latest inductee to the Mississippi Press Association Hall of Fame. Jack? Yes, you are. Is he supposed to say something? I would think so. Come to the microphone.
You're much too kind, Sid, and you and I both know that by training, by experience, journalists, we all learn when people in the powers that be or the people in charge start making pronouncements about what's good and what's not good. We always wonder, are they doing it for the community, everything and what they think is right, or do they have their own agenda? So all these people see it, sitting out here thinking, did he say all these nice things about Jack Tannehill because they're really true, or do he want him to help him win another golf tournament? we'll find out sooner or later anyway. People, I'm home. It's a little bit difficult to compose myself because I've seen this over the years and I've admired, watched us induct people. Gosh, I'd hate to start naming the Paul Pittmans and the Doug Shoemakers and the Sids and the Carolyn Wilsons and Charlie Dunnigans and John Emmerichs. But when I see my name on a list with them, I'm glad it's there. I don't want anybody to take it off. I mean, I am home. I really do. This is something that I'll treasure. You know, I never did anything spectacular. I'm gonna tell you, I didn't, you know, all we did, my staff, all we tried to do for 2,204 weeks was put out a paper that people would sit down and read and get up and know that we told them the truth and that we wanted them to know we were always on their side. The biggest thrills I got over the years in this business, and I mean, it would just almost send chills, is I'd be someplace and someone would say to me, said, you know, I read what you wrote about so-and-so. I saw your column, and it would almost send chills. People were actually reading words that I wrote, and it meant something to me. Like I say, 2004 weeks, we didn't do anything spectacular. Only got arrested one time. But that school board that night, they used the wrong reason under the 1982 Open Meetings Act of the Mississippi Legislature to call an executive session, and I just wasn't gonna leave. Well, the 5 members on the board, 3 of them were and still are good friends of mine. They voted to have me arrested. So they called the police chief, Billy Pat Walker. And Billy Pat, I've known him since he was 11 years old, skipped school, ride a bicycle, smoke cigarettes. And he said, you're gonna have to go to jail. I said, okay, Billy Pat. Well, you know, I knew I was standing my ground. It was ethical. I was doing the right thing and all that. But as we were leaving the building, I was overcome with another emotion. And we all had feet of clay. I remembered that I'd come to this meeting and hadn't eaten dinner, and I'm going to jail, and I bet they've already served everybody, and I'm not gonna eat until tomorrow. So I said to Billy, Billy Pat, can we go by and get a hamburger? Well, it turns out policemen have, just like journalists have ethics, policemen have ethics too. And he said, no, go to jail. They stop for him. It was part and parcel to the kind of journalism that I see a lot of people. I see John Carney and Scott Boyd and so many of you, and you too, Tim. I see a lot of so-called journalists, print, broadcast journalists now, who only seem to be able to keep an audience or keep their ratings or something, unless they're continually bashing someone. And I often wonder, how'd you like to meet them tomorrow walking down the aisle with Piggly Wiggly? You know, you gotta look them in the eye, and you gotta know that you're just telling the truth, or they know you're lying, and you've got to live with that, or share an event at the school where children are both participating. When you got to see the people that you write about and work with, you've got to do it. I always felt like we had to do it right because it was always going to be in front of us, and I wanted their respect, and I wanted them to continue reading our newspaper. I don't mean to bore you, we could all we could all sit here and tell war stories all night. Oh, you in your office, I'll be there with my shotgun in a minute. You know, we've all had that telephone call. We've all had that telephone call and, Jack Ray, please keep my boy's name out of the arrest report. It'll just kill his grandmother. You know, we've all had those telephone calls, but I had one incident in my career that I thought illustrated as well as anything. I had one of my very close friends was an attorney there in Union, and he was also involved with a heavy equipment dealership, and they sold a backhoe to town of Union. Turns out it was stolen. So the law enforcement seized it. Town of Union's out $8,000. As soon as I hear it, I run to his office, and tell me what happened. Oh, he's got this great story, and I take all the notes, and I run one story 1 week and another story the next week, you know, and how he's really gonna be pretty clear. Well, it didn't quite work out like that. The investigators began to uncover this and uncover that. They couldn't come to terms with a plea deal, so he has to go to trial. Trial started on a Monday, and I spent the better part of 2 days on the witness stand, having to stand my ground with my news story, as his story had needed to be shifted to fit the facts of the case. And that wasn't, and it got rather acrimonious. It did. It was acrimonious at times. He was trying to keep his head above water. But we would be in that courtroom all day, and then when court would adjourn that evening, we had to go home, change clothes, and he and I had to go to the ball field because we were co-coaches and co-managers of our son's Little League All-Star baseball team. And we would do that at night. And he's gonna bat third, or who's gonna pitch a second game. We do that, we go back to courtroom the next day. Good news and bad news. Bad news was he did get convicted. He lost his ability to practice law. Even spent a little time in jail. Good news, we won 2 games in the state playoffs that weekend. I still keep up with newspapers and journalism, and I do, and I see the people in this room, and I applaud you. I do applaud you for what you do, and I applaud the hurdles that y'all now have to face that luckily I didn't. But I believe, and I'm confident, and I hope that y'all will keep doing the kind of good job that you do for another 2,204 weeks. Thank you.
How awesome is it when leaders like Mr. Tannehill say, I didn't do anything special. You know, he did do a lot of things special, and it's amazing. So congratulations to you for tonight. Before I make a few remarks and pass the gavel to Mr. Jack Ryan, I want to say a word or two about one of the true kind of quiet heroes of this association. For many, many years, Ned Browning has been a tireless volunteer at the convention, at the annual foundation roast, and winter conference. He has donated his valuable time, his valuable expertise to us for a long, long time, and he knows about our membership by their first names. And he's a welcome and friendly face each time we get together like this. Ned has run our AV for us for many years, making sure that rooms are set up correctly, that all the cables are hooked up right, and that some of our best moments are captured on video. And for that and much more, it is my privilege to present him with the MPA President's Award this evening for his long history of contributions to this association. Ned is retired for many years from teaching and working in ag communications at Mississippi State, which if you haven't heard tonight, they kind of won a baseball game the other day. He continues to be very active in the Starkville community, serving as a longtime club secretary for the local Rotary Club. Ned, thank you so much for what you do. Will you please come up and accept this award? If you haven't ever talked to Ned, you really should. He's a heck of a nice guy, too. So as we prepare to close out tonight, and I pass the gavel to my good friend Jack Ryan, I'd like to say a couple of thank yous, and mainly thank each of you. So I've been where you are. It's easy to get burned out, frustrated. I've never been arrested like Mr. Tannehill, but I've certainly had that phone call about the arrest or the arrest records and keeping so-and-so out of the paper, and tears on the other end of the line, that sort of thing. So I can feel a little bit of that pain. So, but doing what you do is, or what we do, is never easy, right? And it's downright nearly impossible in the face of a global pandemic. But each of you did just that. You should be proud that you and your business came through 2020. And even if it feels like you've been battered, stepped on by the circumstances that are sort of out of your control, you made it. So congratulations for that. I heard a phrase last week that I thought was interesting and worth mentioning tonight. And it was on an ad, but it was pandemic hardened. And think about that for a minute. Pandemic hardened. We've all become a little pandemic hardened, right? I kind of like to think about it, though, that it made us better. So as you've come through one of the toughest periods of time, one of the toughest global upheavals and economic crisis in our lives, maybe even our parents' lives too, you made it, right? If we can survive last year, we can do anything. We can take on anything. And as I look around the room and see some of the faces in this room, they're the faces of Mississippi's newspaper family, including Mr. Tannehill. As Sid said, I remember those days when I was a young pup in this room, sitting in the back, and hearing some of those names. Mr. Tannehill used to dominate. There's so many of y'all that have done that. And y'all basically blazed the path and set the bar for the rest of us. So for that, I thank you. Being part of the Mississippi newspaper family through the years has been a real highlight of my life. God has blessed me in countless ways, but one of the best ways was leading me to down the path of being nosy and a little bit curious about other people's lives and wanting to tell their stories. And that path in turn led me to get to know all of you. And y'all are some of the finest people in Mississippi. So I really appreciate the chance to represent y'all this year. And thank y'all for letting me serve the organization. And I hope the organization, as Mr. Tannehill says, continues on for many, many, many years. I'm sure it will, under the good leadership of Jack. In a second, he'll come up here. But I also want you to join me in giving a round of applause to some folks that, without their hard work and labor, that we wouldn't be here. And that's the MPA staff, Lane, Monica, Andrea, and Sue. So I think Sue's not with us. Thank you. And now the moment you've been waiting for, I'd like to call Jack Ryan, the publisher of the Enterprise Journal and the 2021-22 president, up to the podium.
And right when the camera doesn't work. Come on.
Okay, thanks very much. Here we go. Kevin, before you go, I went and got this made today at the trophy shop thanks for, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 2.5 years of service as board president. He filled in when the prior president had to leave unexpectedly, and so I think that sets a record for Press Association domination, so congratulations. Okay, one thing I've learned already is that if I'll just let Lane Bruce write everything up, we'll be good to go. And I didn't forget my glasses, so we can handle that. I'd like to thank AT&T, if anyone is here from that organization, for sponsoring the reception. I'd like to let you all know that breakfast will be served at 8 a.m. tomorrow in the Deer Island Ballroom. I don't know which one it is, but just kind of walk along until you see it.
Right where we are.
Right where we are.
Right where we are.
Very good. Programs start at 9 a.m. and everyone is asked to enjoy the bar. It's an open bar tonight, and to please support the silent auction, which benefits many worthwhile activities. So I wish I had great words of wisdom to impart to everyone. I agree with everything Kevin said, and Mr. Tannehill, I thought you really hit the mark when you said that you know, you didn't do anything special. Obviously that's not quite accurate, but we don't. We're just there day after day, and people, they trust us and they rely on us. And I think where we all have to get, a lot of us, especially people my age, I'm 59, and we have to go where our audience is. And I'll give you an example of that. At the end of May, the railroad train depot museum in Macomb caught fire. It turned out to be an arson case by a disturbed young man. But anyway, it burned pretty badly. A lot of railroad museum artifacts were damaged. And so my managing editor was there. He took a bunch of photos and he wrote a story about it in the next few hours. And that, you know, we put it on Facebook because that's where the biggest audience is right now. And it got 200,000, it reached 200,000 people. You know, our circulation is slightly below 200,000. So that's where the audience is. And I'm as much of a print guy as anybody else, but we all have to get there. And I think a lot of it, in my mind too, it's like, oh yes, I'll just put that in Thursday's paper. And we have to get to, no, let's get it out there right away. And I'm fortunate to work for a guy, Wyatt Emmerich, who, in spite of his many peculiarities, and I say that with all kindness meant, is really into the website stuff, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. I tell my staff, it's going to be a lot of fun, and so we're just going to have to figure it out and do it.
Fluent in Indian.
But good to know. But I figure that Mr. Tannehill and Wyatt's grandfather, who bought the paper in the 20s and saw it through the Depression, they saw it through tough times too. And so we will see it through ours. And as far as being on the board, I have to give credit for this line to Ray Mosby, wherever you are, Ray. Last night we were talking, and Kevin Cooper, Ray, Pat Brown, and I all joined the Press Association board in 2012. And Ray laughed about that and said, yeah, we said we were gonna bring a revolution. And I thought, well, my God, we have. We've destroyed revenue, we've eliminated jobs, we've turned daily papers into weeklies. I mean, that's a revolution. So we're in the middle of a revolution, and unfortunately, I am not a revolutionary president. If I had two things that I would like to do, number one, I'd like to work with you guys to help get more of the papers to post the dang legals on the website, because the legislature, they want to take it away. They want to set up the Bureau of Legal Notices, you know, and employ 50 people when we're already doing it. And then I would like to get more papers to be electronically delivering their pages to the Press Association so that we could get more timely payment for the advertising. Not trying to make anything sensitive there, but you know, it's the way to go. So we'll do the best we can. I am sure that when somebody has a question, they will call me, and I will automatically refer you to Lane Bruce, and that's the way it goes. Here's the gavel. So thanks very much for coming. Thanks for hanging in there with newspapers, and let's see what we can do.